Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
It's not too often that we get someone here in the studio in Nashville, Tennessee. I want to say almost by fate, but that's kind of what it was.
It was.
My wife and I were shopping at Target one day, and she had this shirt on that said 55 on it, Exile. A gentleman came up to us, and he said, where'd you get that shirt?
Yeah, exactly.
And my wife goes, we went to a concert. And you said, well, thank you. I'm the keyboard player. So in the studio with us today, Marlon Hargis. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, my pleasure. Of course, we were all wearing masks at the time, so nobody knew who anybody else was, So you probably wondered who this strange guy was up asking about our T-shirt.
Well, thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
So the band originally called the Fascinations, and when I started doing my research a while back, I'm going to sidebar here real quick. One of my buddies from many years ago was in Exile one time, Paul Martin.
Oh, Paul.
Back in the 90s.
Great friend of ours. Every once in a while, when we're doing a new project, we may have Paul come in and work on it, because he's an extremely talented young man.
He really is.
And a wonderful guy. His family, they're called Rockland Road now.
Yeah.
Just amazing. So, yeah, Paul's a dear friend for years ago.
He's talented, and I think his kids are even more talented.
You know something? Yeah. I believe so. They're really incredible, and a really good family, too, which is just as important. So
originally called the Fascinations in 1963, and I love how this came about. Jimmy Stokely and the Exiles with J.P. Pennington was in the band at that point. The band toured with Dick Clark Caravan of Stars in 1965. This is the part that I thought was so cool. Changed the name to the Exiles to show support for Cuban refugees.
Yeah, I don't know if you'd say support. It just, and again, this was before I was in the band. However, I was around at that point in another band. As a matter of fact, that tour you're talking about, Dick Clark tour, that was the first time I ever saw the band. I actually went to see the band at one of those shows in Lexington.
As someone in the audience?
Yeah, someone in the audience.
Yeah.
I knew a couple of the guys, but didn't know that, 10 years later I'd be in the band. But it was just because of the name, the Exiles, the Cuban Exiles and all that sort of stuff, Cuban Missile Crisis. That was just a name that was in the news.
Right.
The guys someone picked the name. It doesn't have any great meaning or anything. It's just a name.
It was kind of timely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Let me see. 1978, you joined the band. You were actually the second keyboardist at that time.
Yeah. I'll have to say it's 1973 I joined.
Oh, 1973 you joined the band as the second keyboardist.
Right.
And you guys were signed to Warner Brothers when?
Not then. Now, when I joined the band, we weren't signed to anybody.
Okay.
I always tell young musicians, when I joined the band was really struggling. I mean, a lot of bands back then, it was sort of hard to make a living. The group, even though it was very well known throughout that part of the country, they had decided at some point to do original material, because they believed that, particularly JP, was writing great songs, all that sort of stuff. So, but because of not doing a lot of copy stuff, it was hard to find work, because everyone wanted bands that did cover songs, So when I joined the band, we weren't making a lot of money. It was a struggle till 1978 when Kiss You All Over hit. So I would say we were an overnight hit after 15 years of struggling.
Was Kiss You All Over really the first big hit for the band?
The band, and after I joined, we had some regional hits.
Right.
There was a song called Church Street Soul Revival, which was a big regional hit, oddly enough, written by Tommy James, and he produced
From the Shondells.
Yeah. He wrote it and produced it. We had another couple of singles released in the States and in Europe, actually. To go back a little bit, around 75 or 76, and actually I have trouble remembering some of these dates. We signed with a producer named Mike Chapman and his partner Nicky Chin. They were from England, and they had moved to the States. They were hugely successful over there. There was a group called The Sweet, which was a huge band, and they were big in the States. So they produced them. He had produced stuff for like Rod Stewart and people like that. So they came to the States, and they were looking for an American band. And again, by an odd twist of fate, one of our cassette tapes, which I think a lot of your audience will remember what those were, found its way into his hand, and he liked the way the group sounded and came to Kentucky to watch us play, actually at a poolside party, I think, or something like that. So we had signed with him a production deal and had released some singles. Then we signed with Warner Brothers. Actually, I don't remember exactly what year, probably 76, 77. And then, of course, we spent a year or two working on the album Mixed Emotions, which had Kiss You All Over on it.
Let's back up a little bit here. You first saw Exile in concert when you were 14, you said? How old were you?
That would have been 60. I was born, and I don't mind saying, I was born in 49. So I would have been, let's see, was that 65? So I would have been 16, I guess.
Okay, so you're 16 when you first saw the band.
And, you know, the band started in 63. Coincidentally, almost every member in the band now, we all started playing in bands about the same time. And it all goes back to the Beatles and, you know, Ed Sullivan and all that. So I had been playing in other bands around Kentucky and sort of knew a couple of the guys in the band.
Was keyboards, was that your first instrument that you started on?
It was one. I actually, when I was 5, my parents made me start taking piano lessons, you know. And I tell everyone, I hated it because, you know, I wanted to be out playing ball and stuff. But they made me stick with it. Thank God they did. When I was about 14, around 63 or maybe a little earlier, some guys came to me and said, you want to play in a band, you know? So at that point, I realized, well, this may work out after all.
Yeah.
So that's the deal. Now, also at a certain stage in life, I actually played guitar in a band. I was also a guitar player. So, and there were some well-known regional acts that I actually played guitar instead of keyboards. And then when I went with Exile, they didn't need another guitar player in addition to JP. So I think I played some guitar when I started with the band, but I just kind of eased my way into playing keyboards altogether.
Who were your musical influences? You mentioned the Beatles.
Yeah.
Were you a pop guy?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And frankly, I think most of us were. The real early country music, I'd have to say I was not a big country music fan. It was more pop music.
Well, and Exile wasn't really considered a country band.
No, not at all.
You revamped, what was it, in the 80s,
yeah,
I guess it was?
We were basically a straight-ahead pop rock and roll band.
Because Kiss You All Over was, for lack of a better term, it was almost a disco song. It was a disco song,
yeah. It was what I call a pop hit. We were kind of lumped in the disco era. I personally never thought of it really as a disco song. A lot of people do, you know. I think, again, British groups, there was a group called the Animals that was a huge influence on me because they featured a lot of keyboard stuff. All the Motown stuff, and I think all of us have that same influence. All the Temptations, Four Tops, all that stuff. Those were huge influences, and the whole English thing.
So you joined Exile. I mean, was that something that you saw in your future, in your horizon? How did that come together? Because you guys all played in different bands, and you just kind of met up, and you said it was a struggle. Was this something you just said, okay, look, I'm going to do this full time, and kind of damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. I'm just going to do this. I
had been doing music as a full time thing at that point, anyway. Really through the years, I think. Actually, Sonny and I played in a band. Our bass player, we played in a band together before Exile, around very early 70s. So I had been. Music, I guess you could say my profession. You know, when you're young like that, you don't really think too much about it.
Right.
You know, it was just, you know, you were making money and having fun. But here's the thing. I was working in a really successful club act, and back then you could make really good money playing clubs. And I know I was making maybe $400 or $500 a week playing in clubs. And remember, this is early 70s, which was decent money then. When I was asked to join the band, you know, it was old good news. The good news is we'd love to have you in the band, but the bad news is we're making $75 a week.
Wow.
And I had to think about it a little bit, and here's, I think, the glue that's held us together. I had this feeling that this band was going to do something, and I felt like, you know, it's worth taking a chance. And luckily I had, you know, some frankly, some help from my family and other people that were kind enough to help me out a little bit to sort of help support myself, even though you could get by on $75 a week back then. I think each member, as we joined through the years, kind of had that same thing. There was just a belief that there was something about this group that we were going to make it. I don't think we quite knew how, but we thought if we stick with it, it's going to happen. And of course, it did, thankfully.
We're going to take a break, get a word in for one of our sponsors. When we come back, we're going to have some more conversation with Marlon Hargis with Exile.
This is Sasha from DLMDD in London. Thanks for joining me with host Bob Bender on The Business Side of Music, my favourite music business podcast.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Hi everyone, I'm Larry Butler, and I want to send you a free digital copy of my new book, The Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. That's right. Everything you need to know to launch your career as a singer-songwriter, all based on my 40 years in the live performance arena, and believe me, I've seen it all. In my book, you'll find the 10 things you have to deal with before even thinking about becoming a singer-songwriter performer. You'll also learn about the 5 things every singer-songwriter can do this weekend to make their live show better. 5 things I can guarantee that you are not doing already. Plus, there's tips on songwriting and staging, photo and video shoots, publishing, merch, dozens of other topics. All written for people who don't particularly like to read. And again, it's free. Just go to the Business Side of Music website homepage and look for my book cover. Click on it, and a free digital copy of my book will be yours. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Back in the studio, sitting across the console from us here, Nashville, Tennessee, Marlon Hargis with Exile. First of all, thanks again for being on the show. This is great. Always love it when we can catch someone at Target and say, hey, you want to be on the show?
Exactly. As a matter of fact, I'm going back to Target after this to pick up something. Since, interesting enough, we live relatively close to each other, as you might guess, since we ran into each other at Target.
12 studio albums. 2 greatest hits, a Christmas album, from what I understand, 38 singles, and 8 music videos. That in itself is an accomplishment, especially in this industry that we're in. And 55 years in the business. Last year, I guess.
Well, actually, this is actually the 57th.
Yeah, 57.
57, yeah.
Time flies.
It does.
And then you guys went ahead and wrote songs for that other acts recorded.
Right.
Janie Fricke. Which one did Janie do? Do you remember?
She did a song called It Ain't Easy Being Easy, which Les and Mark Gray, who was a member of Exile for a short period of time back in the early 80s, wrote. And, of course, 2 of Alabama's biggest hits were Exile songs. And we didn't, to be clear on that, we didn't write them for Alabama. They were actually...
They were on your albums,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
they were both on the same pop album, which was released by Warner Brothers. But frankly, at that point, I think Warner Brothers had sort of lost interest in the band, so they didn't really promote either song that well. Then through various ways, Alabama got a hold of those songs, and then, of course, they had huge hits with them.
I know with Take Me Down, which was number 1 in 1982. When my wife and I saw you guys in concert a year or 2 ago, when you introduced that song, I had no idea that was an Exile written song.
Yeah.
So the legacy that you guys have created, not only from a performance standpoint, but from a songwriting standpoint, is really spread across a large spectrum.
It is, and when you saw our show, we do a little medley of there's actually 5 songs, and there are some more songs that we don't do. Sonny wrote 2 huge hits, one for Restless Heart called When She Cries, and then another one for Diamond Rio called Beautiful Mess. And then, of course, JP's had some other, and he's also had some other songs covered by other artists. And I think that's kind of one secret to our success is we don't have to look elsewhere for songs because we have great writers within the band.
I was going to say, are all of you, the 5 members now, all songwriters?
Not really. I'm not. I've had a couple album cuts through the years. I don't consider myself a songwriter. Les is a good songwriter. Steve, our drummer, he would probably be honest and say he's not a songwriter either. So I think at a certain point, I remember in my career, I tried writing songs for years, and I think at a certain point I figured that I'm just not that good at this. So I actually turned to doing a lot of production work and that sort of stuff. So that's where I sort of centered on it. So it's really the three, JP, Sonny, and Les are the writers in the band.
Before you went country with Kiss You All Over, you actually, well, that song, of course, topped the charts, and then that wound up leading to some tours.
Well, wow.
With Heart,
yeah,
with Aerosmith,
yeah,
Fleetwood Mac,
yeah, Doobie Brothers, Boston, a lot.
How was that?
It was sort of crazy. And again, you remember, we were around 30 years old, 29, 30. We were still kids. When that song hit, and of course, we had recorded that song on an album, and it had been in the can for a while. And we were still struggling. I mean, we were just barely getting by. And I remember we'd kind of got news through the grapevine that this song is beginning to happen around the country. All of a sudden, one week we were playing for the door money at a little club in Lexington, literally. And literally the next week we were in Los Angeles filming the Midnight Special and getting ready to go on tour. I mean, it happened that quickly, and in retrospect, it happened so quickly. In a way, we didn't individually really have time to kind of enjoy it in a way. Of course, now you're older, you would approach it differently. But it was just like literally from one tour to the other for 2 or 3 years solid, and touring Europe and other places. So I can see why a lot of bands and acts don't survive that, because you have to kind of hold your ego and yourself and your perspective in order to get through that, because it's a real whirlwind of life.
You mentioned the Midnight Special, and as a kid growing up, and I'm not much younger than you, but in high school, that I remember it was Friday nights or Saturday nights, whatever it was. You'd get home and you would watch it. Was that was it Don Kirshner?
No, there were 2 different shows. Okay, there was a Midnight Special, then there was Don Kirshner's rock concert.
Okay,
and which we did both. We did that as well.
And I remember watching the Midnight Special.
Oh yeah,
and seeing these acts like, why have I never heard of these folks before?
Yeah.
And that was really before the MTV days.
Oh yeah, so that was the only outlet.
Yeah,
and I remember, I ran home to watch the Midnight Special too before we were on it. That's why it was a big deal. And you performed live, which was kind of cool.
Now
too.
It's a TV audience, so I'm sure there's everybody quiet. We're getting ready to go. So was it spontaneous or?
That show was filmed actually in segments. Other words, the forget who the host, and it had a different host each week. Wolfman Jack, the famous DJ, he was kind of the overall host.
Right.
And I
remember Gladys Knight was a host, and different celebrities.
And I think the night we were on, I think Todd Rundgren was the guest host. But when it was taped, it was on a huge soundstage. There was an audience there, maybe a few hundred people. But we just went out and taped our segment. Then there would be a break and another act would come in. So it wasn't done in sequence. In other words, some of the acts that were on the same night they might have taped at a totally different time.
Right.
So it was kind of done a little differently at that point.
Yeah. What a neat time, though, to be in there.
We were real lucky to be able to live, even going back to the 60s and the whole British invasion and the Motown. That's... As the joke says, we may be old, but we had the best music.
Yeah.
And the music was just great through that whole period.
Especially the music back then, it had some substance to it. I mean, when you hear songs like Stairway to Heaven, for example, that's just a whole different mindset of music growing up, especially compared to today. Thankfully, my kids... Mm-hmm. They're big classic rock fans because that's
my daughter, who's she's in her 30s now, and oddly enough, I have a grandson who just turned 6, and we've turned him on to classic. He loves the Beatles and classic rock. Another thing too. Back then, there was, as you said, there was no MTV. There weren't all the huge hundreds of channels. There was just generally AM radio.
You're right.
you had great playlists. You mean they might play Zeppelin, then play Frank Sinatra, and then
the Temptations,
and then the Animals, and the thing is, you each week you're excited to see, well, who's coming out with are the Beatles coming out with a new record this week? It was a different time, but it was just a certain magic to it that will never be that way again.
I was in Walmart the other day, just down the road from us, and in fact, I took a picture I was going to send to one of my old radio promotions buddies from the record label days. And I remember going into Walmart, and it'd just be rows upon rows. Yeah. And now it's about, it's 1/4 of one section.
Yeah. A lot of stores don't even sell CDs anymore.
Yeah. It's a dang shame because we're missing a lot of great music in that format.
To me, to even go back to vinyl, I mean, just buying an album and looking at the art and reading the credits, that was part of the experience.
It was.
Yeah, putting the needle on and you hear that little crackle, and of course, really the fidelity was much better.
Yeah.
Yeah, so no, I at the risk of sounding like my parents did, I miss those days,
Well, and I've shared that too on the show in the past. The liner notes on an album, you start looking for a lot of those same players,
Oh yeah,
you start looking for the Russ Kunkles or whoever it is that impressed you on another project.
Right.
And that to me is also a way that I started choosing other albums I was going to listen to.
Yeah. Or there's a certain producer and you think, well, wow, that's... And then if you saw something else, you might not have known the group, but you knew the producer, and you go, well, I got to check this out.
Well, and you mentioned Todd Rundgren.
Yeah.
There's one, or Ted Templeton, or
any
of those guys. Yeah, you go, okay, well, if he did them, I'm going to listen to this band.
Yeah. And all the great players, the great Motown players, the Funk Brothers and the Wrecking Crew and all those great players, you sort of begin to know who they were, at least as a musician. I don't know that the normal listener knew or cared, but musicians did.
Yeah. I think back then, you're right. The artists and the musicians knew to listen for, like you said, the Wrecking Crew, and you knew, okay, well, if they were on this album.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's funny. As I say, I was a huge Motown fan. Well, there was a great bass player named Bob Babbitt who played just on all these classic Motown stuff. And then through another odd coincidence, my wife actually, I found out, worked with his wife. So in recent years, I got to know Bob very well. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple years ago. But just to know someone that you had listened to on records and read their name on records for years, even as a successful artist, I was always in awe of meeting that and meeting other people that you've been in awe of through the years. And again, Bob is just a great guy, and it's always nice to do that. But when you're dealing with downloads and stuff, you don't know who played on it. You really don't know anything much about it.
We're missing a big part of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to take another break, get another word in for one of our sponsors, and we're going to come back. We're going to have some more conversation with Marlon Hargis with the band Exile.
Hey friends, this is Rick Kua, and you're listening to The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Hey, this Christmas party is getting a little too quiet. I think it's time we liven it up with my favorite Christmas gift, Mr. Microphone.
Hey, what's that?
Well, you set the dial on your FM radio and testing. Hey,
I'm on the radio.
These kids are having a fabulous time with Mr. Microphone, the cordless microphone that actually puts your voice on the radio. There are no attaching wires, so you're free to move around. Broadcast over any FM car radio.
Hey, good looking. We'll be back to pick you up later. You can broadcast in mono or with two or more radios in stereo. Yeah.
Professional entertainers use Mr. Microphone for rehearsing. And you can too. It's practical and great fun for the whole family. And for only $12.88, they really make great Christmas gifts.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Back in the studio, sitting across the console here in Nashville, Tennessee. A beautiful day, a little warm, but a beautiful day.
Yeah,
here.
Ready for fall.
Yeah.
I've had enough of this hot weather.
Yeah, you and I were both talking before the show that we're both about ready to go out and get the fall set up.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. No kidding.
The band in 1983, I think, took a break. You guys took a few years off. Was it just a mutual decision? Had everybody pretty much said, look, we've kind of run the course for now? What was the reason for the band at that point? I guess you were disbanding?
No, actually, not really. No, we were still doing a fair amount of touring, and after Kiss You All Over, we had another couple of minor hits, but nothing in the United States, so that was beginning to fall off. Now, we did continue to tour in Europe, even South Africa and some places, because we were having hits there. And at the same time, you were referring earlier to Take Me Down the Closer You Get and some other country acts. These acts had started having hits with our music. So our manager at the time said, look, you guys are having hits in country music. Why not sort of change directions? And also at the same time, country music was changing a lot. It was going a lot more, I don't know if you'd call it the pop direction or whatever. So while we stopped touring for at least a year or so, we actually took a gig in a club in a bowling alley in Lexington. And we played there, I think it was 4 nights a week.
Wow.
For at least a year. And then we went to another club. And what we were doing, we were actually working on songs to pursue a country career. And then our manager was also trying to get us a country record deal at that point. So we didn't actually disband. We just sort of became a club act again. And really, as a band, that's a great way to really get tight as a band. If you're going in and playing, 4 nights a week, I think we played 3 sets a night, you're going to get really tight and know each other as players, as a band.
You played your own songs along with covers.
And we went back to playing cover songs. And now, it's funny, after all these years, to me, it's fun to play a cover song. A lot of times, this year being crazy, we haven't worked very much, and a lot of times at home, just to play, I'll sit down and work up I worked up a Toto song the other day, just for the fun of it, and just to kind of keep in practice. We enjoy doing, and we do a medley in our show of sort of cover songs. They're songs of artists we've toured with. Like we do a song, it goes all the way from, we do a Roy Orbison song, then we do a Fleetwood Mac song. And again, there's just segments of these.
Right.
We do Roy Orbison, Fleetwood Mac. We do a little bit of an Aerosmith song. Then we go into a George Jones song and Merle Haggard, the Doobies, and then we end with a song by the Young Rascals. So it's kind of fun to play cover songs, actually.
With this downtime that it's so in our face right now, are you guys planning on getting back out on the road 2021, or is that what is the next thing? What are you guys looking forward to?
It looks like, and keep our fingers crossed, we have a lot of stuff booked next year already. And frankly, almost all the dates we had booked this year went away, and they have been rescheduled for 2021. So that's what we're looking forward. We've played a few dates this year. We've been lucky. Some acts have not played at all. And we have a couple of dates scheduled in November, depending on what happens. We had 3 or 4 other dates just canceled because the states they were in, they weren't allowing concerts.
Right.
And we've actually been doing some recording. We just finished, actually last week, we're going to release a new Christmas single, actually. Of course, it'll be released digitally, and we're not sure yet exactly what format or source, because we have a new manager who's working on that. So basically, I think our plan is to just survive this year, and then hopefully things will get sort of back to normal. We actually just signed with a new management company we're really excited about. It's a company called Entourage. An old friend of ours, Tony Conway, who I'm sure everybody in the business knows. Tony, it's his company, and we knew Tony. We've known him from, back. He's another Kentuckian, and
he goes back to Buddy Lee Attractions.
Buddy Lee, and well before then, and we didn't know till we started talking with Tony. He played in some bands that opened for us back in Kentucky. So
small world.
It is a small world. Yeah. So frankly, Tony's working on some stuff, and trying to get by. So we're excited about that. We just signed with a new booking agent a few months ago with Bob Kincaid and the Kincaid Agency. So we haven't just been sitting around doing nothing. We're, as I say, doing a little bit of recording and just trying to, stay inside as much as we can and plan on everything starting hopefully next year.
You're in the studio recording. Are you looking at releasing an album?
Nothing right away.
Yeah.
We were actually going to do a full Christmas EP. Now we had this planned back around March. when everything went to where.
in a handbasket.
Yeah, exactly. And we were going to do like maybe a 6-song Christmas EP because we had a Christmas tour planned, which we had been doing every year. Because I think you mentioned earlier, we do have a Christmas album we recorded a couple of years ago. But after all the pandemic and everything, we decided, well, there's not much point in doing a whole album and spending the money because we can't support a tour. So we decided just to do a Christmas single. And we're probably going to do a video for the single and, have all that released on media.
On a good year, when we're not dealing with this, how many dates a year does Exile do?
We normally did at least 50. And actually, this year we were projecting to do maybe 70 or 80. It was going to be a big year, but that's the breaks. There's nothing you can do about it. So,
is that something you're looking forward to hitting that goal in the next year or two?
Exactly. I think, and it really at our age, I don't think we would like to be out, say, doing 100 dates anymore. I mean, we don't like being away from home and family that much.
The Oak Ridge Boys circuit, where those guys go out and do 120 dates a year.
I don't, of course, those are old dear friends of ours and their band. I don't know how the hell they do it, to be blunt.
Well, at least they got some good tour buses to travel in now.
Yeah, they do. But I honestly don't think we would want to work that much. I mean, we like to go out on weekends for 2 or 3 days. Then, we've all got, well, most of our kids are gone, but grandkids. And, we enjoy being at home. I don't think any of us really enjoy the travel anymore as far as getting on a bus and all the time you spend on the bus and traveling hundreds of miles in the hotel rooms. And we're long past the partying age, so that's really the negative side. When we get on stage, we love it, but it's all the other. Most people don't realize you may spend 20 hours traveling back and forth to play a 2-hour show.
Right.
So there's a lot more to it than just getting on stage and playing.
Every day that you have a show, you have a travel day that's wrapped around that. So when you say 75 dates in a year, you may be on the road 90 days.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head for each date. Now, if you could string 2 or 3 dates together, it's a little better. But if you're going out and doing one day, you can figure out leaving the day before and getting back home the day after. So you're talking about 3 days.
Yeah.
Even though, we have great buses and comfortable bunks and TV and all that stuff, it still gets old and it's tiring.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is.
It's a young man's game.
It is.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it.
My wife asked me, in fact, earlier today, she said, hey, if a record label gig came back up, would you be interested? I'm like, I like being home too much. What do I want to do that for?
I would not want to be starting in the business today, and it's just a whole different world.
It really is, yeah.
And there's no way I would even think about doing it. It's really difficult.
Not to discourage our listeners, but it's a challenge.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. Marlon, thank you for being on the show. This was great.
Oh, man, it's my pleasure. I enjoyed it, particularly since I only had to travel a few miles to get here.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound design by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Busan.
Seems like every time I turn around, I'm reaching out for answers I can't find. Just when I think I don't need help, there's 2 more steps I don't have strength to climb. My prayers just hit the ceiling, fall down so heavy I can feel them. You can change my world, can change my mind with just one word when you believe it. Me, I don't know much, but I know love, and that's enough to one who needs it. When God ain't getting through, God hard enough without the crazy stuff I do to me. I know I'm stubborn, hard to tame, drawn to trouble half the time, insane. But this old heart just keeps on beating. I'm still alive, must be a reason. You can change my world, can change my mind with just one word when you believe it. Me, I don't know much, but I know love, and that's enough to one who needs it. When God ain't getting through, no, when He ain't getting through, you can change my world, can change my mind with just one word when you believe it. Me, I don't know much, but I know love, and that's enough to one who needs it. When God ain't getting through, no, when He ain't getting through, God speaks to me through you.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.
Hey, good looking. We'll be back to pick you up later.